I continue to think, why are these stories in the Bible? I try and draw out the good of these scriptures. You have these messy families with unworthy people. What's the good person in the story? Reuben? He only wanted to beat him up and throw him in a ditch? That's the good character out of the scripture set today? It's very difficult when we take a look through here to say this is what you ought to do or these are the good things drawn from it, because it's not. What we see in these stories are very important, though. The fact that God works with messy families. God works with unworthy people. That has never changed. If we look in the mirror, we see the same things that we do today that we read about this morning. We haven't changed since we've left the Garden of Eden. And so, I guess as a parent, as a pastor, I go back to one of the old standards of raising kids, I guess. Do as I say, don't do as I do. You ever hear that before? Just like it was then, we see this messy situation going on between Jacob, the father, who picks favorites. Oh, that always leads to a healthy household. And then you have Joseph, the younger brother, tattling on their older brothers. Now, I need to declare, I'm an older brother. And if my little brother reported on me all the time, I'd be learning my little brother. There wouldn't be any doubt. And then you have the big brothers that could just, listen, he's a kid. Get over it. Like, they don't need to be frustrated by the situation. Yet all of them have a foot in the door. All of them have put in an oar to the situation. And yet God made a promise to this family. And when God makes you a promise, he follows it through because of us, despite us, but because of us. And he continues to do that to this day. It's important for us to see that. And like I said, that still happens today. We just don't change, it seems. We continue this pattern, and it's very difficult. One of the pieces that I find absolutely fascinating about what we're about to talk about is the expression of love to one another. Because truly, we can honor God and change the world when we go home. We express the love to all of our household, and we do this through words and deeds. We live this out. And it's so interesting when I ask the question, like, what is love? How do you show love to someone? At the other campus last week, I asked the children, and they hadn't heard the sermon yet. I asked them, so how do you show love to one another? And they nailed every one of my points all on their own. And it kind of hit me, that's what they're looking for. They're desperately looking for these expressions of love in their life. And they know it. They described it to me beautifully. But sometime or somehow in the process as we were growing up, we forget what those are and how important they are to us and how it builds who we are in many ways. So let's look at the scriptures today, but go at it through the lens of do as Jesus, God, says, not as you see them do. And we'll stop at different points and maybe show what we should be doing versus what we're seeing. So let's go ahead and jump in again to Genesis 37. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flock. I'm not going to go through all of this. You get the idea. They head out. Now, Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers with the flocks and bring word back to me. Okay, so he's a little tattletale. Now, being a big brother, like I said, those are things that you can teach your younger siblings. You don't be reporting on me, kid. Don't be doing these things. So again, Jacob, Israel is not helping. Joseph is a little tattletale, spoiled brat. He gets all the new clothes. He gets the Ferrari. I drive a Yugo and wear burlap and hand-me-downs. I don't like that kid. And the tensions are beginning to build. And yeah, the brothers are rightly upset in one way. Their reaction, not so much. So here we go, little tattletale sent out again. So Joseph took off to go find them. They were supposed to be in the area of Shechem, but when he got there, they weren't there. They disobeyed. They're off somewhere else. So Joseph happens to find a passerby. He tells him where they probably were. When Joseph arrived at where they actually were, his brothers found them, or he found them, and when they saw him, his brothers in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. That's kind of an overreaction to what's going on, but before we judge them poorly, I never understood why the Ten Commandments went like this: honor your father and mother, and then the second was, you shall not murder. And then I originally thought, well, one is for the kids, and the second is for the parents. Don't murder the kids. But then I found out what the number one cause or motive for murder is. From the very beginning, what do you think that is? To this very day, the number one motive is inter-family disputes. There's nothing like a family member to annoy you deeply. And to this very day is the number one motive for murder. And for some reason, the brothers have reacted so poorly, and they see this bad line stepper just keep crossing. They're to a breaking point. Now, not all of them thought this way, but we see this happening. And where is all this coming from? It's because the origin, the paterfamilia, the father, showed disproportionate love or not at all. This doesn't work for a healthy household. And God says something completely different to us in contrast. He wants us to express love to all of our household, to all of the household. Because what does God do for us? Does he have favorites? Does he hold back and not give to the people that smell right, or the better ones, or the ones that are more able or talented? No. Jesus levies love and service to all believers. He brings that to all of us at all times. And so the instruction is to love one another as he has loved us, to all people, all the household. But one of the problems is today we don't understand what household means. We don't know what that means. If I were to ask you and your neighbors, what do you consider, or who do you consider part of your household, how do you think they would reply? What do you think? Just the ones living with me? It's so narrow. It's so narrow, our understanding of household. And that is not the scriptural understanding of household. This is what household means when God says these words. Any one or thing that you hold sway over is part of your household. Think about that. That's a much larger understanding of when God says, love your household, love those around you. It's much bigger than we think about. Much bigger. Because think about it, if you own a business, that means you hold sway over those employees, so they are part of your household. If you are a manager and you have people that report to you, they are part of your household. The material that you own, the family that lives with you, if you have extended family that you have sway over, then they are part of your household. And think about the time period, even in England and in Europe, you would have these grand estates, and on them you would find a little chapel, because they would bring in a priest or a pastor or pay them full time, and they were required to teach the entire estate about God. Laborers, soldiers, servants, family, they would all gather together, maybe not in all the same seats, because that meant household, meant everything. Okay, how do I show love to my workers? Is that right? Am I allowed to do that today? What does that look like? It does change things a bit and drives us forward, but that's what we ought and need to do. It's very interesting when you then take a look at this whole idea and you look at Paul instructing Timothy. It's kind of interesting in how he says this. And again, think household. If anyone does not provide for his relatives and especially for his immediate family, I do not like this translation. It says household. If you do not care for your household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That's huge. One of my good teachers, his name was James Nestigan, and he was covering a topic, and he brought up this point. He goes, you're going to have people in your life, because it happened to me and happened to my predecessor, they will come to the faith, and they'll be excited, and they'll come to you. They will find a new calling in life, and they'll come to you. They will find God's will for them in their life, and they'll come to you. And they'll ask the same question that they ask me. Where do I start? So what do I do now? I'm meeting with someone at noon today in the back that's going to ask me that exact same question. What do I do now? And You know what his answer is? It's the same as he was taught, and he taught it to me. Go home, start there. If you want to live out your faith, if you want to change the world, you go home and you live out your faith there. Don't stop, but go home and start there. You can't pretend to be something you're not there. They know who you are. Go home. That's where you change everything. And so God says, bring it home as I have brought home salvation to you, to all of you, equally. This powerful Lord, express it to everyone around you. And that's pretty powerful. So you see all this happening in the story. So do as I say, not as you see them doing. As we continue on here, it's very interesting. So the brother is seeing this little kid coming to find them of age 17, but to them, whatever. Here comes the dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns and say that an animal ate him. Now, a cistern was just a hole. There's a lot of sandstone, basically, and the wash water would create these large, holes, basically, like little caves where it comes from the top. And they would fill up with water, like holes do, and it's really hard to get out of these cisterns unless you have help. And some are big, some are smaller. So they're going to find a cistern and just chuck him in there, and he'll either drown, starve, or worse. That doesn't sound very good, right? But when Reuben, one of the brothers, heard this, he tried to rescue him from the hands. Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So you at least had one voice of reason among many. Just chuck him in the hole. Just rough him up a bit and chuck him in the hole. I don't know if that's the good out of all of this, but that's about it. So you see all this going on, and they took that robe off of him, that richly ornamented robe. They sullied it up. They really got to him. They threw him into the hole. They're ready to kill him, right? But as they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw human traffickers going by. Now, again, like murder, we say, well, we're better now. We don't deal in human trafficking today. We don't do this during the College World Series. 20 to 30 people don't get arrested this week every year for doing this, right? Yeah, they do. We haven't changed a lick since we left the Garden of Eden. It still happens today. We just do it in more clever and more technological ways. Even in Omaha, for goodness sakes. And so we see this going by, and we can't condemn them because we still do it in our own town. Sorry to say. And so they see him going by, and this logic, I'm sorry, it's hard for me not to find humor in it, even though it's so depressing. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the human traffickers and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother. Really? You were just going to beat him up and kill him, but now, he's our brother. Let's just make money off of him instead. We're good. Yeah, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood, after all. The scripture's great. Read it. It's awesome. It's full of this. And you see this reality living out. So that's what they did. They sold him off to Egypt. Now, this story ends. There's no resolution. But in hindsight, we know coming up, God's going to bring this family together, and he's going to move them forward through his power, through his strength, because he made a promise to them. But they didn't make it easy. They're messy. They're unworthy. But I have the question that I ask the kids to you. If we're supposed to express our love to all of our household, how do we do that? I mean, what's the command here? We read here in Scripture this new importance on it, like incredible importance. John 13, a new command I give you, says Jesus, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Again, excellent Jesus, you loved us, but what does that mean to love somebody? How am I going to love my coworker? How am I going to love people? What does this look like? And, I need a little help there. And I normally don't bring in other authors into my sermons because there's a little part of me that says, that's kind of lazy. You're just going to get up there and read someone else's material? Do the hard work, John, of evangelism and preach. But in this case, I really wanted something that we could hold on to, that we could talk about, so that we could talk about expressing love to one another and what that might look like at home, what that might look like at work, in the community, to our neighbors, what that looks like. And so, in this case, I would like to bring up Gary Chapman and his 5 love languages. I put the website on your notes in the bulletin, but also on the screen. And my wife and I took a look at this. I wanted something very simple. I didn't want 400 pages of reading. I didn't want a 38-minute, 400 questionnaire thingy. I didn't want any of that. I just wanted something straightforward. I didn't want him to sell something to me. I don't want to be put on spam or cookies. And so what Gary Chapman has lovingly done is created this website that's only 1 page, very simple. You fill it out, and you immediately get results right on the screen. So it's a lot of fun. So my wife and I went ahead and hopped on and did this. And I don't know whether this was the way it works, but what it does is show you the ways that you believe people are expressing love to you. So what are some of the languages you see as bringing love to you, that brings love into your life? Okay? And so when you take a look at this, it's very interesting. So I had my wife fill it out, and I'll let her test it first. Wife filled it out, didn't take much time. And what's interesting, the love language that she feels the most love from, by far, is the one I least like to do myself. So I'm like, this can't be right. So I went ahead, it's true on her side, it can't be true on mine. So I hop on, and sure enough, the love language that I feel the most love from, she likes doing the least. So there's this crisscross kind of thing going on. I don't know if that'll be for you, but it was for us. You can do it with kids. You can do it with other people. It's very interesting. And the very first one, of course, that he lifts up is called words of affirmation. To love someone, to show this love. There's nothing more powerful for an individual that there's this feeling of being appreciated. Using words where people feel appreciated. King Solomon once said, words either bring life or death. And as someone who's a wordsmith, if you know me long enough, I can shred something completely with my words. Shred them. I can shred it to death. Or I can uplift people. It's precision of language. It's what I live by. And boy, I can do both. So I need to be careful. A word like, honey, thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. Boy, thank you for working those extra hours. This was amazing, and it touched so many people. These words are huge. Son, daughters, I love you to death, and I cannot wait to see what you're going to grow up to be. I really can't. I can't wait to grow up with you. These are amazing, and they really touch people. It's one of the ways we can show that, and I can do that at work, neighbor, or at home. Acts of service. Just so you know, this one was mine. This one's my top one. I'm someone who really, I do a lot of work for others. I do serve a lot because it's just the way I live. I plan a lot. I help people get where they need to go. And there's nothing more loving to me than someone willing to actually step up beside me and help. I don't get that a ton. So when people do end up doing that, that shows me a lot. Do you think vacuuming, cooking dinner, is an expression of love? Oh my gosh, it is to me. That is like one of the top things ever right on my list. It's absolutely wonderful. And so we can do this with one another. And we can do that at work too. I took the employees out bowling, which to me was a huge joke, but it was a very kind of a wonderful thing. One of the best bowlers I've ever seen is in this room. Claims to be an amateur, but she obviously isn't. But it's one of those things where you just laugh. It's just fun. You show them that you're willing to spend some money. You're willing to spend time away from things because you appreciate them. You love them for that. And I did laugh a lot. It was more fun for me, I think, than anyone. And that's the way it is. Acts of service. All right, receiving gifts is another one. Now, I don't mean a hoarder or someone who's greedy. This is what I mean. So my wife and I took this, and I always like to try things out. And yes, at the beginning, all these will look mechanical. But over time, if you make it a habit, it becomes who you are, and they receive them well. So I'm thinking, how can I do this? Well, my wife, for the summer, took on a principal job doing a summer school. So she gets there about 6, leaves at 12:30, and every day And my kids laugh about this. Every day at 12:30, what's for lunch? What's for lunch? What's for lunch? Day after day after day. And I'm like, ugh, I don't know. I don't really eat lunch. Whatever. Scrounge. That's not a good answer to her. And so I thought, okay, how can I do this? So what I did, I put forth the effort to go and get her a Chick-fil-A gift card, and then I tried to find a note the same size, which is apparently impossible. Where do you find little note cards? I don't know where to find those things. I contacted Hallmark, and they were great. They helped me. But $8 for a pack of little cards? What's wrong with people? By now, it's like a half an hour into this project. I'm exhausted. So I write on the note, I put on it, "Love you, lunch is on me." Put it together, and I taped it on her windshield before I went to bed. So when she got up, she could open up the door and see this note. Now, apparently, I have to do that more. And it takes me at least a half an hour each time, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to do that or not. But that's what we're talking about with this receiving gifts part. For her, that showed that it was worth my time and effort and resources to give to her. That's a huge sign of love to one another. Okay, a couple more and we're done. Quality time. Quality time. This is uninterrupted time with one another. One of the things we like to do as a family is watch a movie. It's the one thing I can kind of get them all herded in one place to do. But when we start watching the movie, this is not a love language to me. This annoys me, period. So we get everyone together, and we start watching the movie, and what does all my family look like? And that's not watching a movie. You're listening. And there'll be things happening on the screen, and it annoys me, where one gives them a wink or something like that. I'm like, you got to see this part because it's important. And like, I rewind, boop, 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 rewind. I go, put them down and please watch. We're watching. Like, no, you're not. Heads up, pads down. Look at the screen just for a little while. This is giving someone your undivided attention. You know how rare that is today? It really is becoming more and more rare to just set things down and listen to one another. So for those of you, this kind of triggers you, then this shows great love, is to put it down and to focus on each other. Well, the last one is physical touch, Now, this is my wife's number one. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know why. I'm not a big PDA person. I don't like public displays of affection. This is what happens in my brain when I hold my wife's hand in public. There's a meter running in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that was great. And, we kind of go to, oh, look over there, hon, look at that thing, and we kind of do that. I don't know why. Why is that? And so for her, this is like huge on the top of the list. So I made a commitment to myself. I go, Jill, I'm going to do 20 touches a day. 20 touches a day. And I know it sounds mechanical and kind of absurd, but that's how I live life sometimes. You just follow me around. You will not stop laughing. I won't be laughing, but you'll be laughing. My life is just bizarre. So I kind of go out there, and so I tell my wife, I'm going to do 20 touches, appropriate touches a day. Okay. And so if you ever catch my wife saying, that doesn't count, that's not a touch. That doesn't count as a touch. You'll know what she's doing. Because I'll be like, hey, Jill. She immediately says, that's not a touch. Like, hey, Jill, how was your day? Love you. And tell me about it. I'm like, meter, running. I love my wife. And I do. I love my wife dearly. And there's nothing more than I want to bring her honor, to have her be proud of me, and to honor my name and my household. There's nothing more I want. But I don't know. That one's a tough one for me. But I will do it for her. And over time, as I do these pieces, it becomes part of who I am. And she accepts it, and I accept it. It's kind of fun. And so physical touch, appropriate physical touch, and even at work, to be able to touch in the right way, shake a hand means so much to me. To just tap someone on the shoulder and say, good job. All those really mean something. You can do that in the community, at home, at work. All of these we can use, which is so nice, And you're not left alone here. The last scripture I want to read as we get going is this. I think it's kind of cool, and I'm glad the same questions were being asked because, come on. You got to think about it. Did they really know how to express love back then either? We're kind of the same, right? And so we read in 1 John this wonderful passage, "Dear children, let us not love with words of tongue, but with actions and truth," right? With actual actions, and do it honestly to one another. So these were coming up then, same issues that we have now. It's kind of fun. Well, our families are the closest relationships we have. Now, whether we like it or not, the people in our families are going to be part of our lives in some way for the duration of our existence. My grandfather died many years ago, but 80% of who he is still right here. Still right here. It's just whether we like it or not, the family helps and shapes us. That makes families the most important place to begin to show God's love with one another. It is incredibly important. And no matter what or who the problem is within our family, God says, "Listen to me. Don't do as you're doing. Do as I say." God wants us to love our families, our households, with the same love he shows for us. This God so loved us that he gave his only son to die for us and to serve us. He loves us, and he's there for us, which is so important. Now, don't get me wrong. I get it. There was certainly a lot behind the brothers' actions that resulted in Joseph's slavery, but God wants us to do what's right no matter what seems justified or how right we are or how much it is our right to do something against people. He wants us to listen to his voice and follow through with what he has taught us. And we can let God shape our reactions toward family members in large and small ways, like through the 5 love languages. And I invite you to please go do that. It's kind of fun to see that lived out. And we've been married 24 years, and we still go through all that. It was one humorous thing after another the last 2 weeks as we work through this material. I don't know. You may be that way. It's your problem. So what are some of the ways you can ask God to help you show love in your family, in the household around you? Because he can help. Because he's the originator. He is the true giver of love, hope, peace, and joy for all those who believe.